All right, good evening. Welcome to tonight's ordinary meeting, and good to see a healthy number of people in the crowd this evening. This meeting is being broadcast on the internet, and the recording of the meeting will be published on the Council's website. As a visitor in the public gallery, you may be filmed. By remaining in the public gallery, you consent to being filmed and for the recording of you to be made publicly available by the Council. A copy of the Council's live streaming and recording of Council meetings policy is available at the back of the room and on the Council's website. Please speak with one of our staff members if you have any further questions. Thank you. Okay, tonight we start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, that's the Wathaurong people, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. Apologies for this evening. None to be noted. Thank you. I'd like mover and seconder for leave requests. First for Councillor Contell from the 22nd of February to the 4th of March. Move Councillor Asher, seconded Councillor Nelson. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. And also for Councillor Asher for leave on the 12th of February. Move Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor Contell. Those in favour, those against, that is moved. Thank you. Move and seconded for the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December 2018. Move Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Contell. Those in favour, those against, they are carried. That seems such a long time ago, 2018. Declarations of conflicts of interest. I'll be raising one of perceived conflicts of interest on item 4 for this evening. Any others to be noted? If not, if they do arise during the meeting, please let us know. Question time. Question time is an opportunity for members of the gallery to come forward and ask a question, which we'll do our best to answer. If not, we'll take the question on notice and supply an answer within 14 days. We have a number of questions that have been forwarded prior, so I'll go to those first and we'll work our way through them. In relation to, I'll start first of all, in relation to the Polish Community Association, which we'll discuss this evening as agenda item 2. Just before we take questions, I understand there's a lot of community interest in the Polish Community Association's electronic gaming machines application on tonight's agenda, and many questions have come in for public question time tonight. First, I'd like to thank you first for coming in and also providing the questions for Council and to express your opinion. As this is item number 2 on tonight's agenda, City officers have put a recommendation before Council and councillors will debate that recommendation. This means we'll not be able to answer specific questions about specific questions raised, as we cannot preempt a decision. We have to always keep that open mind, but we'll do the best we can. I still welcome you to ask your questions, and we'll take on the submission in our decision-making process. So just make that comment that you might not get the answer you're looking for as such, but and I'm sure you'll stay for the agenda item number 2, and there'll be much more debate and conversation about that particular item. Our first question is from Henry Skuta. So apologies for my Polish pronunciation. It won't be good, so I apologise now.
Called worse names.
All right. Thank you, Henry.
Look, can I just first of all thank the Council for giving us the opportunity to ask questions. The application for an increase in the number of poker machines at the White Eagle House is very important to the Polish Community Association members, but even more so important to the Breakwater Eagle Soccer Club, who has about 110 members, and half of them are young boys and girls who'd like to advance in soccer, and it all will impinge on the decision that you make today. My question is, I'm sorry that I've written so many times to the Council, because we wanted to make sure that our actions are transparent, and so you probably know what we're on about, but just let me outline what we're going to be spending the money on. We've got $4.7 million we'd like to spend on a major upgrade of our sporting change rooms. Now, we're going to do that because the soccer club wants to encourage women to join the soccer club. At present, we've only got the young girls playing, but no senior women. And if we upgrade the facilities, we'll probably encourage the women to come and join the club. We're also intending to upgrade the hospitality area, which hasn't been touched for about 15 years. We also would like to provide an all-weather synthetic soccer pitch for the club, making it one of the best soccer pitches in Geelong. And finally, installation of regulation lighting for the soccer field. Now, this will all be provided at no cost to the ratepayer now or in the future. Furthermore, the cap set 12 months ago by the Minister on the number of gaming machines in the Geelong area for the next 20 years, I'm going to say 20 years, is 1,416. Currently there are only 1,305 in operation, and once the Leopold Sports Club, the Geelong RSL and the White Eagle House machines are operating, the total will be 1,385. The remaining are sitting in hotels and 10 still to be sold by the Geelong Football Club. That gives us a total of 1,416 machines. That's the maximum cap that we have in the Geelong area, and it's not going to go up for the next 20 years. Now, my question is, why is the council opposing or intending to oppose our application and potentially depriving the community and over 80 soccer kids of sporting and other facilities at the club that we'll be able to offer, especially when evidence shows that increase in number of gaming machines does not increase the incidence of problem gambling. Just limiting the number of alcohol, just as limiting the number of alcohol retail outlets doesn't decrease the alcohol abuse in the community. Effective education will mitigate the problem, and it can be funded from the $80,000 that the council is prepared to spend fighting this, and I'm including the committee that the council is intending to set up. And furthermore, the 43 gaming machines at the White Eagle House will be installed in 3 tranches, not all at once, and they'll be installed over a period of 5 years. So it's not going to have a big impact on the Geelong community. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Henry. Appreciate your questions and your comments. We can't provide answers as such.
I can understand that.
There'll certainly be discussion shortly.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Very much.
And I do appreciate...
I've got something else to add. It's not a question. I did send this in to the council, I think last night at about 12 o'clock. Am I able to go through that?
If it's understood that Henry's obviously speaking on behalf of the club, and there's a lot of information we're receiving, so I just hope that translates to perhaps a little shortening of a number of the questions later on.
Oh, well, I hope it does. I'll be very quick, though.
Okay.
In the agenda papers, when I read them, I was surprised that the council says that has assessed the impact statement or impact assessment report and concludes that there will be a net detrimental effect to the community if the application is successful. Now, I don't know which impact assessment statement you're talking about, because if you're talking about the URBIS assessments report, then on page 49 of that report, it states, based on the assessment presented in this report, that's the SEIA report prepared by URBIS, this report, the net effect of introducing 43 gaming machines at the White Eagle House will not be detrimental to social and economic well-being of the city of Greater Geelong. In fact, I believe, the author says, it will be a positive effect. That's a statement that I believe you must have missed in that impact statement report. Also, in your agenda, you say that there's no conflict of interest registered. Now, I know personally that there are people on the council that do have association with political parties who are vehemently opposed to poker machines for whatever reason.
Henry, I'm happy to grant a little bit of extra time, but I would appreciate you stick to your...
All right, then finally, under the heading of discussion in the agenda, you state that the White Eagle House application only provides limited detail regarding the plans for the additional community facilities or the financial capacity to deliver the community facilities listed. Now, once again, it shows to me that our application wasn't read in full or just maybe skimmed over. We presented a very detailed submission to the VCGLR, and we also presented that to Councillor Murray and Councillor Contal when they came to visit the club and looked at our proposals. Now, if our application is examined properly, you'll find that it has detailed plans of the community facilities that we'll be providing. It also has been professionally prepared with detailed costings analysis of the 3 stages of development in this particular area. So I don't know whether the councillors have read our application or have read the impact statement, but I think before you make the decision, I suggest that we do, because I think democracy depends on making decisions on factual evidence. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Henry. Our second question is from Jack Kapinski.
Thank you. Okay. Just briefly, I guess the state government gaming taxes are structured in such a way that having more machines at our venue actually results in less gaming tax. That means the Polish Community Association's actual proposal will be funded mainly from this sort of tax advantage, around $400,000 a year, and from bank borrowings. As Fenrir has mentioned also, the additional licences we have acquired are from the Geelong area. They're in no way going to increase the number of gaming machines in the Geelong area. They're already in Geelong. Furthermore, there is no evidence, as we've suggested, that increasing number of gaming machines in a venue actually increases the number of problem gaming in that particular venue. On the other hand, very clearly, if this proposal is unsuccessful, then we won't receive the tax advantage. There will be no ability to borrow from the bank for the loans. This actually means that our club will be forced to sell the land that we currently have being used as a sporting facility. Not much option to do that. We'll have to forego the dream of an all-round year community sports facility. Remember, this is a facility that's privately owned, being used by the whole community of Geelong, available to the whole community. Now, given that there's the tangible and certain and overwhelming benefits that our proposal brings to the community, as documented by the Urbis report that clearly highlighted that this independent report showed that it's a clear advantage, not a disadvantage, to having these gaming machines within our community, and there's a minute risk of any disadvantage and likelihood, and the actual likelihood of the VCGLR agreeing that the benefits of our proposal grossly outweighs the disadvantage, and that was the case with the Geelong RSL as well. Why should the council spend good money fighting our proposal?
Thank you, Jack. We'll see what the discussion.
Thank you very
is.
much.
Thank you. Maria Krubalt. Thank you, Maria.
The Polish club follows the best practice in the responsible serving of gaming. By the law, the club also must ensure that all that surpluses are reinvested into preserving our parents' hard-earned legacy of White Eagle House, and to continue to provide sporting facilities and general access to members of our border community. If we file in our application, the 43 gaming entitlements will most likely be lost from the Geelong community, clubs, pool, and go to profit-driven, privately owned pubs, hotels, where owners not really live in Geelong. Furthermore, it is generally acknowledged that pubs present a higher risk of problem gaming and community clubs. That's why I'm asking, why then would Council support the risk of outcome by opposing our application?
Thank you, Maria. We'll
Thank you.
have the discussion in item 2. Thank you. Helena Zickler?
Zickler was right.
Zickler, thank you. Welcome.
Just an introductory statement, and it'll be followed by my question. All recent data shows no nexus between increases in gaming machine numbers and gaming expenditure or problem gambling. Specifically in Geelong, the closure of the Geelong Football Club's 100 machine venue did not, and I stress, did not result in a drop in gaming revenue. Instead, the gaming revenue was spread amongst other venues. There is no evidence that our application will result in any identifiable increase in problem gambling. It therefore appears that some councillors seem to have a political agenda against gaming machines. Now, is this political agenda sufficient reason for Council to potentially sacrifice the current sporting facilities and forego the $4.7 million upgrade to the sporting fields and the hospitality venue, all of which will add to the economic activity in the Geelong area? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Helena.
Thank you.
Christina Matzak.
My question is this. We understand that all forms of gambling can be detrimental to some individuals and to the community, but studies show that alcohol abuse is by far a greater problem. You only have to drive through Marlborough Street around midnight on a Saturday to sadly witness the number of inebriated young people dragging themselves or being dragged by friends along the street. Why are the responsible serving of alcohol regulations not enforced at these venues as they are in some community clubs? Why is the council issuing building permits for more and more bottle shops? We now have bottle shops attached to pubs, bottle shops attached to every supermarket, and if there are no supermarkets or pubs on the main street, then we find freestanding bottle shops. Has the council set limits on the number of alcohol selling outlets, or does it only set limits on pokie outlets and then only focusing on community clubs?
Appreciate the questions. They're a little bit different, as in different discussions, but we'll see how we go with the item this evening. Here's the next question. We have a question from Rusty. Is Rusty with us this evening? If not, we'll take his question on notice. Next question is from Simon Mims. Is Simon here this evening? If not, we'll take Simon's question on notice. Thank you. Cesar Escobedo has written in. If not, we'll take his question on notice as well. And our final question sent in is from Peter Cage. Peter not here? All right. That concludes the questions forwarded in, so I'm happy to open the floor up to anyone from the gallery who has a question they'd like to ask. Yes, sir? No, sorry, sir. It really... Well, if you want to come forward... It is question. We'll allow... Will we, Mary? That's great. Come forward. Come forward, sir. Let's hear. Righto. statement.
My name's Tom DeBart. I'm a resident of Geelong now. I've just come down from New South Wales about a year ago. I was a councillor on the Byron Shire Council for 9 years, and I must say it's a lot more exciting than this one. My statement is on the poker machine issue. The social damage caused by poker machines is well researched and documented, and I'm sure you're all very aware of. The application from the Polish Community Association, which you are considering, flagrantly breaches the spirit and most of the provisions of your electronic gaming policy, and your staff recommendation fully recognises this. Justification submitted by the association is unsupported and very much in the usual pie-in-the-sky mode most such applications rely on. Of course, the gaming lobby has most state governments in their pocket due to the rivers of gold they contribute and the media clout they can deliver at election time. The last Tasmanian poll was a prime example. Local government remains the last bastion against such powerful and damaging players, and spending money to protect your constituents in the courts is part of your remit. I'm sure the recommendations of your staff will be supported by all informed and ethical councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments? It's questions from the gallery. If not, we'll continue with the meeting. Yes, come forward, please.
Sarah's mate.
Hi, my name is Lois Newman. I'd like to ask a question regarding the application for additional pokies at White Eagle House. I'm concerned by this application and the harms that an increase in machines at this venue will have on our community. As the council documents state, the current density of machines in the area surrounding the venue is currently 20 machines per 1,000 adults, compared to an average of 6.5 machines in the rest of the city. I feel that this number in an area of disadvantage is already too high, and I'm concerned strongly about an increase of machines at this venue in this area. I'm concerned about the impacts on the well-being of individuals and members of our communities that these additional machines will have. What does the council intend to do regarding this application, and what policies does the council have in place to mitigate the harms from poker machines in our community?
Hopefully our conversation and discussion and debate during item 2 will answer some of your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Any other questions? If not, we'll move into petitions. We have a petition this evening. Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On behalf of one of the residents in the Windermere ward, there's a petition to be tabled around flooding works and a building application. So I'll just table. Do I need to read that out or just table that?
Just table it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll table that and then we can have a conversation.
There's 300.
Oh, sorry. There is 360 signatures on that. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Grisbeck. No further petitions. All right, we'll move into section B, the reports. First one is Amendment C386, the Covenant College, Creamery Road, Bellpost Hill adoption. Moved Councillor Mason, thank you, and seconded Councillor Aiken. Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This amendment is to facilitate a consolidation of land already zoned as special use with 3.237 hectares of FZ land at 65 farming zone land at 65 Creamery Road, Bellpost Hill, so that long-term expansion and growth of Covenant College is assured. The exhibition in October-November last year resulted in an advice from the EPA to check a possibility of soil contamination. Following careful review, no such contamination exists. There have been no objecting submissions to this consolidation, and the rezoning will allow the school to expand and have a positive social impact by providing improved educational facilities in the northern suburbs of Geelong. The site is located within the future Western Growth area. The land is remote from the proposed extent of the intended rural interface of the growth area upon completion of build-out. The land also abuts already developed land occupied by the applicant for the amendment and is proposed to be consolidated with, developed and managed in the same manner and purpose as the land already occupied by Covenant College. Mr Mayor, any future development of the rezoned land will be required to obtain all planning and building permits consistent with the provisions of the zone and schedule and the Building Act 1993.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Aiken.
Not too much further to add because the movers actually covered most of the issues. Yes, essentially Covenant College has been there for a long time. It is restricted in its ability to grow because it's surrounded by farmland. This proposal does change farmland to special use zonings associated with schooling, and there were no objections received. So I think it is good future planning by the school to actually do this, and it actually is good future planning by the council to support this, in light that this is sort of in the middle of our potential western growth zone, which is going to have at least, I understand, a population of up to 60,000. So the school actually looking after its future with this proposal is an excellent forward thinking and does deserve support of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Any other comments, questions?
Just a short comment, somewhat in line with Councillor Aitken's comments. Knowing the area quite well, there's only one house in close proximity to this school. Other than that, the closest properties are sort of Rowlands Road or up towards the top of Creamery Road towards the Macedonian Church. So the fact that there's been no objections, either from the property in close proximity or Myers Reserve sporting clubs, which are just adjacent to it, suggests that by and large the community is in favour of this. And as Councillor Aitken has already said, it's a strategic and intelligent move for the school to actually put this in place.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Mason to close. Thank you.
I thank my fellow councillors for their support. Just to add, the proposed amendment supports the planned sustainable development strategic priority of the Council Plan 2018 to 22, and consistent with the objectives set out in Section 4 of the Act, the amendment provides for the fair, orderly, economic and sustainable use and development of this land. Thank you.
Thank you. I put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Item 2, the electronic gaming machines application from the Polish Community Association. Moved Councillor Mason, seconded Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Mason, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, the applicant has applied to the VCGLR to increase their number of EGMs from 35 to 78, as we heard earlier tonight. This is at White Eagle House in Breakwater. Mr Mayor, the officer's report to Council recommends that the Council oppose this application. The officers have put a great deal of work into this, and it is a difficult issue. Net losses from those 35 EGMs in 17-18 were of the order of $1.7 million, or about $48,000 per machine. There are concerns that approval of that submission would result in an increase in the density of EGMs in suburbs, including Whittington and Breakwater. These suburbs already experience relative disadvantage. Council policy has been developed within legislative frameworks and policy contexts of the state of Victoria. These require councils to facilitate the implementation of ongoing licensing and management of gaming as a legal activity, in addition to promoting health and well-being within the municipality. Mr Mayor, there are social and health and well-being criteria of no disadvantage, no significant disadvantage and no relative disadvantage. Indeed, this report aligns with the Council Plan 2018 to 22, the strategic priority area, where there is issues regarding improved health and safety of our community. The density of the gaming machines per 1,000 population is one specific criterion, where there should be an even spread and not concentrated in one locality, and where social disadvantage may be exacerbated. The current density of machines in a 2.5 kilometre catchment around the venue is 20 machines per 1,000 versus 6.5 for the municipality. The total number of losses from the EGMs in the Greater Geelong region for 17-18 financial year was $118 million. Of this, approximately 20% is attributed to the area under consideration. While recognising some positive impacts from electronic gaming on the community, the key objective of the policy is to reduce the negative impacts of problem gambling. Mr Mayor, I understand from the questions today and also from my reading that extra EGMs would support a new bistro, function room, playground, new kitchen, bar facilities, community rooms and player and referee soccer changing rooms, etc. Along with substantial investment for the community in an all-weather soccer pitch. I applaud such social conscience and social activity, and I thank the club for its planning in these areas. I do, though, and I have actually visited the site and have been so impressed even last year with the work contribution towards DeSoda and other activities. But I do implore the club not to fund such activities from inputs from the most vulnerable members in the community and to find less damaging ways and more creative ways to raise funds for the development of these facilities and soccer in the area. Mr Mayor, the city needs specialist legal representation to support its case. As we've seen tonight, there are complex arguments and disputes over the interpretation of data. We need to do a good job in our submission to the VCGLR, and the recommendation from our staff, our officers, is that we need sophisticated inputs, legal and other experts. So it's important, I believe it's important that the estimated $30,000 is necessary to invest. Unfortunately, we do have no current budget allocation for this. Since 2011, the city has on occasion utilised both a barrister and independent expert attending hearings for EGM applications. I do have some concerns about the sustainability of every time we have an issue that we need to get external independent advice, and I do hope that we can build in-house capacity to attend to these issues. Though I do see on this occasion it's extremely important to put a good case, a strong case, and correctly interpreted. So the use of an independent expert strengthens the city's submission, which is a data-heavy document, and an expert can speak to the detail of the assessment directly to the Commission. This provides the opportunity for the Commissioner to gain a more robust understanding of Council's position and enter into direct dialogue with the independent expert on the content of the assessment and Council's position regarding this application.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Mansfield.
I reserve my right.
Thank you. Others to speak on the matter? Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, tonight I find myself in a position, once again, trying to advocate on behalf of a respected, hard-working community group with a significant post-war multicultural links that has worked tirelessly for decades to continually contribute to the broader community, with little to no handouts from government level. And I'm very aware that no matter what I say, I'm more than likely going to be in opposition to the vast majority of councillors here tonight, and I appreciate that. On this occasion, though, I'm advocating on behalf of the Polish Community Association. And if it wasn't for the fact that I felt I owe it to the community, particularly the struggling multicultural communities, and all those that work hard to make a go of it without asking for handouts, I would have to probably say I'm really probably wasting my time and breath tonight. But all the same, I will go forward and put a debate and discussion. And it's not so much about electronic gaming machines or whether they are good, bad or otherwise, but it's the approach that we take to those that choose to operate these machines in a legal and legitimate manner. Because in my opinion, no matter what organisation or individual that makes an application for EGMs now or any time into the future, regardless of whether they are located in the City of Greater Geelong region, this council has already, by its actions in the past, decided to oppose the application. And it's more than likely that the money that we spend, the ratepayers' money, to fight the application, as far as I'm concerned, is likely that we will have very little impact on the outcome of the hearing when it reaches the VCGLR. And in fact, with the way that we've been conducting ourselves when it comes to the application of electronic game machines, we may actually be running a fine line as to whether we are running against the Local Government Act. As far as, why I say that is because the Local Government Act stipulates that we must keep an open mind. But when it comes to EGMs, it doesn't seem that that's the case, because whatever application comes to this chamber, it is always opposed, and I've no doubt that it will be opposed again today. The EGM cap for the City of Greater Geelong area, which includes the borough of Queenscliff, is some 1,421 EGMs, and currently we're sitting at 1,305 machines across both municipalities, which is 116 EGMs below the cap. This will remain exactly the same should the Polish community be permitted the access to the 43 machines from the Geelong Football Club. The Polish community's application is simply requesting to transfer the machines several kilometres up the road. Here we have a community club that we make it extremely difficult for them to apply for any meaningful council grants or funding because they're privately owned. We actually have very little scope for them to come to us and ask for support, whereas just about every other sporting club or community group within Geelong has the ability to apply for funding. And then we demonstrate the disrespect to fight them every step of the way when they are legitimately and legally trying desperately to generate revenues in an alternative and proactive manner. So regardless of what may be said about gambling, it is generally a legal right for all Australians over the age of 18 to be able to make their own decision about whether they engage in it or not. The Polish community and the association has taken all of these aspects and arguments into play, as we saw when we read their application, and are being sincere that they intend using the revenues generated by the machines to put back into its facilities and in turn into the community by providing amazing sporting facilities and cultural facilities and spaces such as all-weather synthetic sports pitch and female-friendly change rooms and much more. In my opinion, this will be more of a positive offset than any negative that potentially may be brought on by problem gambling. And notwithstanding the fact that we understand that there is problem gamblers out there. I fundamentally do not agree with the approach we're taking as a council on this matter. And what I feel most strongly about is that we as a council are apparently trying to minimise the apparent risks and harm associated with gambling by attempting to restrict the trade and the ability to engage in illegal business activities, inadvertently endeavouring to limit the citizens' liberty to freedom of choice by trying to apply a form of prohibition. And whilst this might be harsh, to me the governing approach that we are applying in some ways is similar to that in which you would expect from a dictatorship. In fact, One of the main reasons that many of the multicultural communities and people and ethnics, including the Polish, immigrated to Australia all those years ago was to get away from this type of government behaviour. As I previously mentioned, if we're really serious about reducing the risks and harm to inappropriate gambling, then in my personal opinion we should be concentrating our focus and efforts and funds, of which are some $30,000 unbudgeted dollars, on education rather than the removal of the activity. I mean, what will it be next? Will we be restricting the access, the amount of alcohol that's sold from a bottle shop or from a pub, restricting how many people can put bets on at the tab or at the races? These are all legal activities. Our Multicultural Action Plan calls to assist and support our multicultural communities. Well, obviously when it comes to the Polish community, this does not apply. We would prefer to make it even harder for them to survive as a club and association and as a minority group than it already is. I can't stress enough how inappropriate I feel about the approach that we're taking. For as a council to stand in the way of legal business activities and to try to take rights away from people not to gamble is not really our place. Equally, if we want to reduce the amount of EGMs in our region, then we should be approaching this more strategically and discussing the total cap with the state government, rather than just playing the man rather than playing the ball. So is this really where we're going? The last time I looked, we lived in a democratic country and businesses and hard-working and everyday Australians and people were free to make decisions and develop their businesses and organisations within the laws of this country without having council getting in the way or fighting them in court, fighting our own residents in court. Is this the direction we're taking, to restrict respected community groups that are able to trade, but to take this at all costs just because we personally may not like something? Tonight's not about voting on whether we like pokies or not. It's whether the application is appropriate. So if this said, whilst I know I'm just wasting everybody's time, I respectfully once again ask all councillors here tonight to think through the decision you're about to make on this item and vote in favour of our precious and valued multicultural and community groups and organisations, which are made up of ordinary people, not standing to make any personal gain. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Anyone else to speak at this stage? Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. I am supportive of the officer's view that not to increase the number of EGMs at the Polish Community Association, known as White Eagle House. I feel that more than doubling the amount of poker machines is probably excessive. The reality of the proximity of this venue on the same street as Buckley's, who also have EGMs, is therefore I think we're increasing the number of pokers in an area that's already swamped with EGMs. Whether or not we spend the $30,000, will it influence or not influence the outcome of the VCGLR? So I'm foreshadowing that if this motion is lost, that I would be making an amendment to the recommendation of taking out 8.2 is the spending of the $30,000 on this. I think that in listening to Councillor Contell and thinking about this over the past few weeks, it is a difficult conversation to have around the legitimate community associations, and I do see the work that the Polish community puts into both soccer and the community in there. But I'm grappling with both. I don't agree with increasing the gambling machines, but I think Councillor Contell is right. It's a legal business and it's a legal thing to do. But we can't deny that it does harm to the community. But on the other hand, it does support local sport. It supports other applications of support returning veterans. It supports multicultural groups. So I'm stuck in the middle at the end of the day, but I don't agree that increasing EGMs in our community is the way to go forward. And I think that foreshadowing that if this motion is lost, I will be putting up a motion that 8.2 will be removed.
Just before you close, Councillor Grisbeck, just on that, the advice I have is, we're discussing the recommendation here as it sits.
Yep.
Once I put it to the vote,
Yep.
that's it. There'll be no further amendments or similar. So
I won't be
you'll need to
voting
make,
for
if you wish to make your amendment, you'll need to put your amendment up now.
But you can foreshadow if the motion is lost. If you foreshadow during the debate, you can put up an alternative motion if the council rejects the original motion. So, on point of order, I challenge the advice you've been given. Yeah.
We'll just confirm that. Thank you. I just want to be clear before Councillor Grisbeck closes. Okay, thank you. We're clear. Thank you. Right, we'll clarify that. So
I will not be voting for the recommendation as it sits right now, but if this motion is lost, then I will foreshadow the amendment that I will take out number 2, the alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Any other councillors to make comment? Councillor Asher, then Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Asher.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this particular application is one of many such applications we've had and will continue to have while we sit under the cap for the region. And I don't support more gaming machines. However, I do understand that they generate significant revenue for community groups and for sporting clubs, and I fully empathise with the Polish Community Association. And great presentation tonight. I really do have strong feelings about how hard it is to generate revenue for sporting clubs. And I agree with Councillor Cantell as well. The bigger strategic issue is whether we should be lobbying for fewer pokies in the region as part of our future. And I think we should be arguing for that. That'll address the issue of repeat applications for the available gaming machines. But for this application now, I actually support the recommendation of the officers as consistent with our current policy. But we do need to have that broader discussion on the limit for the region, and in that sense I applaud Councillor Cantell's very well articulated case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. To me, this is a simple matter. I don't find this difficult at all, and I don't associate it with the Polish community like I didn't associate the Belmont matter with the RSL. This is just, in fact, endorsing our own policy, and our own council electronic gaming policy argues against the introduction of EGMs in areas where density is above that of the municipality as a whole, as is the case in this application. The current density of machines in a 2.5 kilometre catchment around the venue is 20 machines per 1,000 adults versus 6.5 for the municipality. The city experiences the 5th highest number of losses of EGMs in Victoria. And if you believe what was written in the Geelong Advertiser yesterday, and in this case I do, $121 million lost through poker machines in the Greater Geelong last year at a rate of $234 a minute. Now, if this meeting has been going half an hour, that's over $10,000 has been lost in pokies since we started the meeting. The numbers are staggering, and I think I said it last time, at some stage I believe it is our responsibility to draw a line in the sand. And I'm not saying tonight's the night, but we have a vote on this tonight, and it's about supporting our own policy. Other factors that have been written about, 5.16 million at Sphinx, 5.98 million at the Grovedale, 4.04 million at the Norlane Hotel. I agree that we should be lobbying the state government to reduce the number in the city of Greater Geelong, and perhaps that 30,000 or another 30,000 could be used in that area. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. It's about whether we support our own policy and want to spend $30,000 in doing it. And if this building, the White Eagle, was somewhere else, not right next to Buckley's, and it wasn't near the suburbs out there that we constantly hear struggle, well, maybe it might be a different matter. But it's not. Within a few hundred metres, there's another venue. So our own policy argues against the introduction and the increase of EGMs in that area. in all consciousness, I've got to support this motion tonight, and I find it very easy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments to be made this evening? Councillor Manane, thank you.
Thank you. Most of it's been said, Mr Mayor, so I won't dwell on what's already been said. But the reality is, the extra pokies are not in the community at the moment, and when they go back into the community, Geelong families are going to lose another $2 million, according to the numbers. And it's and whether it goes to these machines end up at the Polish Club or any other venue, that's the hard facts, that Geelong communities will continue to lose money as long as they go in. I think we need an immediate review of the cap, of the number of pokie machines that we have, and that review should look at how we sit with respect to the rest of the state. I think we need a review across our city to see where the pokie machines are. Are they distributed? I think we need a review on who holds the licences. Are they clubs or are they private? I think this needs to be done pretty urgently, and we can develop a comprehensive strategy and take that strategy to the state government. Furthermore, I think we ought to be lobbying other regional centres around regional Victoria for them to do the same thing and encourage them to take their findings to the state government. I think regional Victoria needs to wrest back control of this issue, and our voice should be heard, whatever that voice says. But at the moment, it seems to me whatever we say in this chamber is not going to be the final decision, and we are stuck with whatever that decision is. We know that these things are having a detrimental impact on some of our community areas, but we have no control. And I think that we need to speak as a united voice in regional Victoria to what can be done to get a more even, get a position on this that is more palatable to our community. As Councillor Contal has said, it's a legal and it's exercise, and I don't see why we can't have poker machines in our community for as a form of entertainment. But I think that we've let it go too far, and I think we need to rein it back in. And with respect to spending some money on presenting our case, I think the numbers here indicate that maybe we should, in this particular case only. I wouldn't be in favour of spending money all of the time, but the numbers here are pretty distressing in terms of the distribution. This area, even without the increases, are sometimes already 3 times the municipal average. That seems staggering. So if we're going to implement our policy and be serious about electronic gaming policy, if we are going to spend some money, then this is probably the time that we should learn from it, but we should make sure we get an impact from what we learn, and also the message that we give, so that it serves us well in the period ahead, where we're trying to get this matter under control for our community. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I had a few notes written down on my computer, but I now have the blue screen of death, so I'm just going to have to go down on some of the notes that I've crudely written. I don't like pokie machines. I don't like them at all. I wanted to make that clear. I found offence when someone in the gallery said that we're tied to political gains or something. Find that's offensive. I don't like poker machines at all. Another councillor said that, quite rightly said, that we need to follow our policy. Yet I've looked at our policy, and not only does this not sit well with me, because reading this report, it says 0.81% of the Victorian population are problem gamblers. Now that's not just gaming machines. That's horse racing, that's greyhounds, that's trots. Now not only do we condone horse racing, this council, we actually sponsor it. We are sponsoring gambling. And I don't understand why one kind of gambling is okay with council, but another kind of gambling is not okay. The previous council went after, like we're doing now, to the local gaming regulation to oppose these increases in poker machines, yet we're always told that we needed to pick our fights. And as I've said before, this is the wrong fight. This is a community group who is looking to make their community better. I have to totally agree with what Councillor Contell said. Certainly this community has been persecuted more than most communities. And if they've only got a certain amount of machines, if someone turns up to play at White Eagle House and there's no machine there, they're going to go next door. They're not going to go home. They're going to go next door. And that money is not going back into the community. That money is not going to get spent on soccer pitches. That money is going to go into someone's pocket. This $30,000, another councillor said, we're investing it. I think we're gambling it because we're not going to win. The stats show we're not going to win. So we're gambling $30,000 of ratepayers' money for something we know we're going to lose. And just on that, that's $30,000 of my money, that's $30,000 of your money. For 0.8% of the population, that's 1,000 people. Yet, I can tell you there's 21,000 people in Highton that don't want aged care facilities. Yet, we're not spending any extra money on that. We're just letting it go to VCAT. We won't put any extra lawyers into it. Why don't we? This is not about gambling. This is about spending $30,000 on a community group that's trying to make that community better. And I can't support it. I just can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Aitken, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, as you can see, this is a difficult issue for everybody. I actually hope the Polish community also had the difficult debate about this issue as well too, because ultimately I don't think anyone's questioning the quality of what the community's actually put forward in terms of their proposal of benefit. The significance of what they're attempting to develop is fantastic and should be commended. But the ultimate issue is actually where the money's coming from, and that's actually what caused the difficulty for all of us. And I hope the Polish community did have the debate amongst themselves as well too about where that particular money is coming from. And I mean, some of the stats are like at the present time, the 35 machines that the Polish community does have, the losses that they make per annum are just over $2,080,000 per year, and each machine is actually making taking $48,391 worth of losses from the community in Geelong. And when you multiply that by their application, which is 78 machines, and if they keep the same losses levels that they've got now, the Polish club will be looking at annual losses that they're taking out of the Geelong community of $3.7 million. And of that $3.7 million, the Productivity Commission has actually said 40% of all expenditure comes from problem gamblers. So in fact, what the Polish community with their application tonight is saying that $1.5 million of their 3.7 is actually coming from problem gamblers. And I don't think that we can ignore where that money is actually coming from. And it is council's responsibility, because we're actually not making the decision about granting the application. Our responsibility of councils is we're actually supposed to provide an objective view to the Victorian Gaming and Liquor Regulation Commission And that objective view is supposed to assist the Commission to administer its responsibilities. And the legislation that actually says that the Commission has to make a no net detriment test. And that no net detriment of any application before them has to look at the social impact, the economic impact, but the legislation makes it quite clear. If there is any detriment to the local community from the granting of gaming machines, it should be rejected. And what the council has a responsibility is to actually put forward our local knowledge about this particular issue. And what council has done is established a policy as to how we develop our recommendation before the Commission. And what our policy talks about is we will guide the Commission in their response to their responsibilities, and council will attempt to work to reduce the harm of gambling in the Geelong community. And the policy hones on this area that harm minimisation is a significant responsibility that the Commission has to consider in making the no detriment test. And what has happened in Geelong, we have an uneven spread of electronic gaming machines at the present time. And unfortunately, the statistics that have been presented before us is that that spread actually happens to be in our areas of most social disadvantage in Geelong. And unfortunately, the Breakwater Whittington area is one of those areas. And it is overrepresented with electronic gaming machines as it sits at the present time. And what we do know about pokies, they are addictive. Poker machines are designed to be addictive. The flashing lights, the sounds, they are all triggers in your brain to make you addictive to that process. And what is going to happen in Australia shortly is we're going to start having a talk about ethics and ethical decisions. And the reason why we're going to have that debate in Australia is something called the Royal Commission into Banking. Now, what happened? Banking actually is legal in Australia, and in fact it's very profitable in Australia. But what the Royal Commission has actually identified with the research that's been presented before us is that the ethical decisions, was it ethical in the way the processes that they were actually undertaking to reach their aim of profit, was it ethical? And you know what happened in a governance sense? The bank said, no, our goal is profit. And it's the Polish community saying to us tonight, our goal is to provide these community facilities, but the ends justifies the means. Well, no, it doesn't. That's exactly what the Commission actually looks at, to actually say, does this expansion of electronic gaming machines in that locality have a detrimental effect to the local community? And we do have to talk about ethics. Is it ethical for us as a council to support the establishment of community assets based on the losses of other people and the harm that it makes on other people? And that's the questions we need to be asking ourselves, and that's what every person that's involved in the industry associated with electronic gaming machines need to be questioning themselves as well too. What are the ethical impacts of us participating and growing the expansion of problem and harm associated with the endeavours that we've been in? And we need to debate that as a community, and it may well have the impact of reducing the number of machines that we have throughout the Geelong region. But Council has a regulatory and legislative responsibility to be able to put forward an objective position before the Commission so the Commission can make their assessment about the detriment. Is there no net detriment with the expansion of these machines at that particular site location? And as a consequence, we have a responsibility to be able to make a decision as well too. Now you ask then, so why should we actually be paying money to actually defend our position? Well, in 2018 there were 13 applications before the Commission, at which 4 were refused. So 30% were refused. And of those 4 rejections, one was the Altona RSL, another was the Dandenong RSL, another one was the Limbrock Hotel, and another was a new established premises in Officer. And each of the councils that actually put their social and economic assessment statement before the Commission had legal advice, legal representation, expert witnesses, and they presented the local information in a legal position that we wouldn't have the capacity to do as a council without making the financial commitment to be able to do that now. So the reason why we should be funding this is because there is a very good chance of success.
30%.
And we have to have responsibility to adhere to our policy, which says that we will try to minimise harm. We will try to reduce the impact of electronic gaming machines in our community, and we are backing that up by making the financial decision that we are tonight. So there is no guarantee that we will have success before the Commission, and if the Polish community has a very good argument and a strong argument, they will win it, and they deserve to win it. But we also have a responsibility to make an ethical decision in terms about the impact that it's making, and we also have a responsibility to back up our policy position, which doesn't say we will spend $30,000, it actually says we will make an allocation up to $30,000 to spend. And we have a very defendable case in front of the Commission. And I reflect back on my own personal position. I normally support my community when they come to me. The Polish community are a fantastic community, and normally I would have no hesitation batting for the success for this community because it is such a worthwhile group and their proposal is very good. But the ethical question of where that money is coming from doesn't sit with me. It is coming from losses in the community, and it is coming from problem gamblers, at least 40% of those losses. And I cannot sit here and accept that the end justifies the means, because it certainly doesn't. And it doesn't in this case, and it should never do in terms of when one person in the community loses and another person benefits from that loss is not acceptable ethical position that I think any councillor should be able to sit with.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Any further comments? Councillor Sullivan, thank you.
Thank you. I've never heard of any healthy benefits of EGMs, but the Polish club has a legal right to apply to the proper governing body that is entrusted with making this decision. That legal body is not us. The people of the White Eagle have a just and lawful argument, an argument that shows a plan of increasing their contribution to the community with an upgrade of their facilities, an ability to provide for not only for current members, but for an expansion of women's soccer, a move that's desperately needed within our city. More so, I cannot support the allocation of $30,000 to this single fight when it's shown to just come at us again and again and again. This is not an efficient use of ratepayers' money. Instead, it should be allocated to a wider strategic approach to EGMs in our municipality and to bringing down the limit. So I cannot support the recommendation as it stands to deny a lawful right and a waste of a ratepayer's dollar.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Just before I go to Councillor Mansfield, just a couple of quick comments. This has nothing to do with the fact that it's the Polish community. It's, we respect our multicultural communities as well as any city, I would suggest, in the world, and we demonstrate that quite strongly. And whether it's the Polish community in this case or the RSL in recent times, as long as I've been on council, we have been fighting against EGMs in our community and the well-documented damage that they do. Yes, there are benefits, we hear about that, but the overwhelming issue is the damage it does to our community is undeniably enormous, and the numbers speak for themselves. And as I say, this council, as long as I've been on here, has been fighting electronic gaming machines in our community for a long time, and I dare say will continue to do so. It's clear White Eagle House runs an incredibly successful operation out there. It's been out there for some time. It's incredibly popular and obviously has a very successful business model out there. We're not saying White Eagle House can't have EGMs at all. You currently have 35, and clearly they seem to have been quite successful for you, hence you're looking to extend that. And I understand that. But we as a council and I guess elected community leaders have an obligation to the whole community and the whole the health and well-being of that community. And a part of that is some of the issues that we face with problem gambling, and it is a huge, real problem for us and for us as a community. Someone mentioned before about alcohol is legal, as is gambling. Yes, alcohol is legal, but it also has restrictions around it. You can't be drunk, you can't drink and drive. So there's all these sort of, you're trying to draw different analogies for different problems, but everything that's legal also has conditions around that. And as I say, Whitehall House, very successful, and we're not saying not to have pokies, we're just saying we mightn't agree that you should have 35, but the fact is the law says you can have 35, and we're not, well, at this point in time, I'm not supporting extending that number of the poker machines that are there, or the EGMs. And it was mentioned before about, if they can't get a machine at Whitehall House, they go nearby where the money just goes into the pockets of someone. Well, in actual fact, I'm assuming they're referring to Buckley's Gaming Centre, where Buckley's has also similar issues, problem gambling, but it also contributes quite strongly to the community through a whole range of programs, and I know that for a fact. I don't support it. I'm just saying, just because if Whitehall House is full, they go next door and the money doesn't go back to the community. That's not entirely correct. I am one of the greatest critics, I guess, of first poker machines ever coming to Victoria, and the manner in which they've come, in particular to individual operators, I think was one of the greatest mistakes ever made by a government. But that's history. You can't change that. So you have to deal with what we have today. And in relation to the potential allocation of $30,000 or up to $30,000 in funding, I've also, with my fellow councillors, been stressing to the CEO, we want our current in-house legal team to be across this issue so we don't have to spend anywhere near that amount of money, and have our in-house legal team get up to speed on what's required in these hearings, get the experience required, go along, be a part of the hearing, so we don't have to allocate funds that we do not want to allocate to fight this particular issue. But in this particular case, it's a matter, if we're going to do it, we have to do it properly, and the only way we can do it properly is to spend money we don't want to, and there may be some further discussion later on about that, but that's the current position we find ourselves in. So I can't support the application. I obviously support the Whitehall House, the community, and the work that it's done for the Polish community in particular. It is a huge asset in our region, of which our multicultural community does amazing work right through the region, in which the Polish community is a huge part of that. So I can't support the application or the recommendation as it stands this evening. Councillor Mansfield, who reserved her right to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank all of my fellow councillors for the discussion on this issue tonight. I think it's clearly a difficult issue. It's one that invokes a lot of passion and different perspectives, and I think the way the debate has unfolded has been very respectful, despite those differences of opinion. I'd also really like to thank the community members who've spoken on this issue this evening. It's always good to hear voices from the community and present their case before us. I acknowledge and appreciate the efforts made by the Polish Association to engage and inform councillors about their application and the proposed use of funds. I really appreciated as a councillor getting all of that information and being able to assess that. And I also support the great social and cultural contributions the association makes to our community, as I think every councillor here has mentioned this evening. However, based on the evidence demonstrating a strong likelihood of increased harm from problem gambling that would result from more machines at this location, I cannot support the application. And this is consistent with my position on this issue previously, and has nothing to do with my political associations, but draws directly from my personal values and ethics, my belief in evidence-based practice, and my experience as a GP, including my time working with people experiencing homelessness and poverty, many of whom had issues with problem gambling. The location of this club is on the border of one of the most disadvantaged areas, not just in the municipality, but in the whole state of Victoria. 20% of all money lost on pokies is lost in this area, in a very small area. Within 2.5 kilometres of the venue, there are already 3 times as many machines per resident than the average for the whole municipality. So there's a dense concentration of poker machines already at this venue. Between July and December last year, close to $1 million was lost at the existing pokies at this venue, and this application seeks to more than double that number of machines. So we could expect that those losses will increase. Now, contrary to what we might have heard tonight, more machines is linked to more problem gambling, and there's a large body of research to support this. And just as some examples, the Gaming machine density. This was a study done by Eastern Health and Turning Point provides support to problem gamblers. Gaming machine density independently predicted rates of calls to Gamblers Helpline and clients using Gamblers Help after controlling for a large range of other factors. Another study, areas with EGMs with greater numbers of EGMs per 1,000 residents had higher rates of help seeking for problem gambling. In a report by the University of Adelaide, a positive relationship was found between the number of problem gamblers and the number of EGMs in an area, with an estimate of 10 EGMs per 1,000 adults considered a threshold for a higher rate of problem gambling. We're already at 20 in this area, so more than 10 is the threshold. It's also been mentioned that education would be a better strategy. Now, I'm someone with a bit of a public health background, and as a public health strategy, education is actually one of the least effective measures when it comes to prevention. We've got a lot of other tools that we can use, and regulation, restriction, reducing access to harmful activities is actually one of the most effective ones. Education sounds great, but it doesn't actually work as well when you're trying to change behaviour. An argument that's often made in support of pokies is that the revenues are put back into our community, and I have a lot of sympathy for clubs that need additional revenue, that they're particularly clubs that are struggling or that have great ideas for new activities and infrastructure to support our community. But the amounts that go towards this from EGMs are really small compared to the total losses, and on average in our municipalities around 2% of what's lost goes back into the community. That's really nothing. And it's not this specific case, but overall it's not a lot. In any case, the issue is where the money's coming from, and that's what I can't support. I support the expansion of the club, I support the soccer clubs, the soccer pitch, the facilities, but I can't support where it's coming from. Many people who use the machines have a gambling problem, and the harm that arises for them and the broader community, for me, far outweighs what is spent on the community from the machines. As a council, I believe we must put every effort into opposing this application. This is consistent with our policies and plans, and it's why officers have made the recommendation they have. It's consistent with what many councils around this table have said and voted, the way they've voted in the past. I agree with Councillor Nelson that there's some contradictions in what council does with respect to problem gambling. For example, we hold some of our council meetings at pokies venues, so I just say that. And personally, I'd like to see us doing a little bit more to address some of these contradictions, if there's an appetite for that. I also agree with councillors who've suggested we should be lobbying for a reduction in the cap, but they're not the decisions before us tonight. We've got a very specific decision here. I appreciate the concerns raised about process here. I completely agree we need a more systematic way to make decisions about funding of these sort of things. I had a notice of motion before council that was supported in October that called for that, for a systematic approach to how we fund these and some budget to be put aside. But we're not at that. We haven't got that information yet. So in the interim, we're going to have to consider this one as it stands on its merits. Also, contrary to what Councillor Contell has suggested, Council are actually considering each of these cases on its merits as an individual case. It's not a blanket approach. We do have a policy that guides us, but we're considering each one individually, and this is something I actually called for again in a notice of motion that went before Council in September, that we decide on every single individual application as a council. The amount of money in the scheme of things here is relatively small, particularly when you consider the millions of dollars of harm that will result from more machines at this site. It's been said that it might be futile to spend any money on this effort based on the past, and as Councillor Aitken has pointed out, if you analyse particularly recent decisions of the VCGLR, the best and really the only chance we have of winning or of being successful in our case here is to have legal representation and an expert who can properly present the local statistics and the context. If we don't do that, we are almost certainly going to lose our application. Even if the applications aren't rejected outright, and this is important to remember, at the very least there might be some more conditions put on this application. Much stricter conditions were achieved at the Geelong RSL because this council had the strength and the courage to back up our decision with some legal representation. We put some money into that. We didn't win overall, if you consider winning just getting a rejection, but we got stricter conditions, and that's something we wouldn't have got if we didn't put that case forward. I'd also like to point out that many councillors here have been expressing some concerns about things going on in central Geelong, homelessness, crime, drug activity, and saying, what can council do about some of these really difficult, sticky issues? And from my previous work experience, I can tell you that problem gambling is one significant factor that feeds into these problems in our community. And as a council, we have really a limited range of opportunities and levers to tangibly address these issues. But right before us, we have an opportunity to do something that says we genuinely care about problem gambling, the harm that it causes, and these broader social consequences that can be a result of them. So I'd ask my fellow councillors, really, this is how I'll be considering this one, but think about how you'll think about this decision when you look back on the end of your council term, and will you feel comfortable you made the right call? Do you want to be wondering if we'd just spent the money on putting forward a stronger case, would we have had a different result? If we put, could we have prevented more EGMs going into an already disadvantaged area of our city, or could we have done more to prevent the harm from problem gambling in our community? They're the questions I'll be asking myself, and I'd like other councillors to consider those questions in their decision.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Mason to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I do thank all my fellow colleagues for the respectful and complex debate that we've just undertaken. I won't reiterate all of the things that have just been said, but in summary, we do appreciate and we fully embrace our multicultural community. And we do thank and are very grateful for the social conscience and the social work that are, and the aspirations for the various community facilities which are envisaged. Nevertheless, gaming is a legal activity within this state and elsewhere, but it must be considered within the context of public health and consumer protection. And in the context of ethics, the knock-on effect to the broader community range from family disruption, families unable to pay schooling other costs, to local economies where money is otherwise not spent on clothing, food, recreation and other sporting venues, etc. These all impact heavily when there's no even spread within the recommended caps and the machine density within our communities. So it's appropriate that a sound case be put to the VCGLR and that they be the final arbiter in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. We do thank the Polish community coming in this evening and speaking to us, bringing their questions and their concerns forward. We do appreciate that. Thank you. Item 3 is the new policy adoption, delegations policy. Moved Councillor Grisbeck, thank you, and seconded Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's hard to back it up after a decent conversation like that. This is a report recommending that Council adopt the delegations policy, the proposed delegations policy. Council's got many powers and duties and functions, and it is practical to delegate some of those to some of the officers or the CEO. This prevents every single matter having to come before Council, and I think we would be here for a long, long night if we were to consider all of those without delegation. We're already working under delegated authority on certain matters, but this policy puts in a formal framework around it. So we're not actually changing the delegations. This is a policy around how we deal with delegations and puts the framework about how we will allocate those out. So that's put the motion forward to agree to that.
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. And just to add somewhat to that, putting this policy in place will strengthen the city's governance and is recognised good practice. I'll leave it at that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from other councillors? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Grisbeck to close.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I put that recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. I'm going to hand over item 4 to Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Item 4 is the tender T190015, the provision of grinding and decontamination services. I'm going to move it for that, Councillor Manane, and I'm seconding that motion. Councillor Manane.
Thank you. Well, this report, Mr Deputy Mayor, recommends that the Council award a contract to Green Waste Recycling Services. The contract is for provision of grinding and the decontamination services of green organic waste at the city's new green organics facility at Anarchy. And this facility, as I understand it, long before my presence here, and probably many others as well, many years in the making, 5 years or more, as I understand. Obviously, we had to first find a suitable site, and for whatever reason, it was found at Anarchy, and then, of course, negotiated a long lease of, I think, of up to 20 years. And so it is a bit of a moment in time that we're now at a stage where we can officially award a contract to this company to carry out the work that has meant quite a number of years of planning by the staff, and we compliment the team at the City of Greater Geelong who have worked on this project for that time, some current and obviously some past. The initial contract is for 3 years with a couple of possible extensions of 12 months, with a maximum of 5 years, and the contract's worth about $7 million over time. The offer of contract comes after we had our usual competitive tender process, assessed against our set of weighted criteria. And of course, as I mentioned before, Green Waste Recycling Services scored the highest of the 2 tenders, and we would like to award the contract to them.
Thank you, and I'll just make the comment that I agree. This is actually an exciting moment for the council. This has been coming for some time, and to have it to where it is now, I think it's a pat on the back for those who have been involved in this for quite a few years. And I see that the services will commence the 1st of February, so in a couple of days' time. So I hope they got their motors running. So anyone else like to comment on this? Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Just a quick note that this is a very impressive operation the city is undertaking. Councillor Mason and I were lucky enough to take a tour of the facility some months ago when it was getting up and running. So we're very excited to see that this recommendation coming before us so this program can get started. It's very well worth its cost.
Thank you. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. I think one of the, when looking through the documentation of the tender, I think one of the things that stuck out for me in this tender was that all the tender submissions satisfied the mandatory criteria and were deemed conforming. So that is a really good positive impact that everybody was in the mix, and that the everybody demonstrated the necessary capability and staffing and resources, and that this tender is actually open and not in the confidential section of council business. So it is good to see that everybody can see the weighting of how we chose this particular submitter, and I think it's a credit to the staff for allowing this to come through and let the community see this type of information when we award tenders in this space.
Thank you. Councillor Aiken.
Look, Councillor Grisbeck's touched on the comment I was actually going to make, which I don't wish to make really any comment about the tender, but this is actually a significant governance change for the council. This is the first time that a tender is actually being discussed in open camera. Before, those reports were actually in confidential, and what the council is making a commitment to is to try to achieve best practice in terms of openness and transparency in our decision-making processes. And the community will see more tender documents that can be placed in open, brought to the open chamber so the community can actually see the full process of council's responsibilities. And I think that's a tremendous new initiative, and it does deserve the level of discussion that I've just made now, and also Councillor Gresbeck. I mean, there are some role models around Australia and benchmarks. The City of Melbourne certainly is known nationally as one of the most open and transparent organisations in terms of their tendering and contractual relationships and information provision that they have. They have public registers as well too that we could sort of look at to enhance the manner in which we're meeting the community's expectations about open and transparency in decision making.
Thank you. Anyone else? Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Someone getting the mayor? Yeah.
She's smart.
Don't adjust your sound, it is just quiet in the chamber.
Item 5, revocation of flood-prone area designation of new lots at Warralilly, Estate Stage 78B. Moved Councillor Manone, who's an expert on this now, and Councillor Nelson. Thank you, Councillor Manone.
Oh, thank you. I have, over my time, learned what an ARI is, which is a average recurrence interval, which is the 100-year ARI that a lot of these policies are based on. But what we're dealing with tonight is a revocation of flood-prone with respect to some land at Warralilly Estates, stage 78B. Gee, 78. That's producing a lot of homes, and as is the normal case now, that the overlay can be removed because of work's done, road construction, internal drainage, and earthworks generally can contain what was potentially floodwater issues within the roadway. So the property is known as also known as 612 Torquay Road, Armstrong Creek. So I'll put that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Manone. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As someone who used to live in an ARI for about 10 years, I'm well aware of the 1 in 100 year flood that council officers put on certain properties in and around the municipality. Glad to say that I no longer live in one. I'm happy to say that neither do these people at 74B. So it's great that council officers are working with developers to remove these designated areas of flood.
Thank you. Any other comments from other councillors? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Manone to close.
Nothing further.
Put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. Item 6, another one, a revocation of floodplain area designation of new lots at Charlemont, stage 5. Councillor Manone, and secondly, Councillor Nelson. Thank you.
Exactly the same deal here, Mr Mayor, at Charlemont, stage 5, also known as 150 to 230 Horseshoe Bend Road, Charlemont. So put forward on the same basis.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Not much more other than Dennis Family Homes are doing a great job down there at Charlemont in this particular development, and it's good to see that these people are being rewarded with the removal of that revocation.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Manone to close. Put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. I can have a mover and a seconder for item 7 to move into confidential, please. Moved Councillor Asher, seconded Councillor Grisbeck. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. That will be heard in confidential. Section C, Assembly of Councils. Move and a seconder, please. Moved Councillor Contell, seconded Councillor Mansfield. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Section D is the planning delegations. Move and a seconder, please. Moved Councillor Asher, seconded Councillor Murray. Those in favour, those against, that is also carried. And section E is to move into confidential. I need a mover and a seconder to do that. Move Councillor Sullivan, seconding Councillor Asher. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. We are moving to confidential. I thank the remaining gallery members that have stuck with us this evening. We appreciate your attendance. Thank you. If you don't wish to come in, you can still catch us on the internet. But you're most welcome to come in.